There are 4 parts of visualization that you can learn and practice to assure that you use this incredible power to its best advantage all the days of your life. Now, the first aspect of visualization is called frequency. This refers to the number of times that you visualize a particular goal as achieved of yourself performing in an excellent way in a particular event or circumstance. Repeat a clear mental picture of your very best performance or result, the more rapidly it will appear as part of your reality. The second element of visualization is the duration of the mental image, the length of time that you can hold the picture in your mind each time you replay it. When you deeply relax, you can often hold a mental picture of yourself performing at your best for several seconds and then longer for several minutes. The longer you can hold your mental picture, the more deeply it will be impressed into your subconscious mind and the more rapidly it will express itself in your subsequent performance. The third element of visualization is vividness. There seems to be a direct relationship between how clearly you can see your desired goal or result in your mind and how quickly it comes into your reality. Now, here's an interesting point. When you set a new goal for yourself, your image or picture of this goal will usually be vague and fuzzy. But the more often you write it and review it and repeat it mentally, the clearer it becomes for you. Eventually, it becomes crystal clear. At that point, the goal will suddenly appear in your world exactly as you imagined it. Now, the fourth element of visualization is intensity, the amount of emotion that you attach to your visual image. In reality, this is the most important and powerful part of the visualization process. Sometimes, if your emotion is intense enough and your visual image is clear enough, your goal will immediately come true. Of course, the elements of frequency, duration, vividness, and intensity can help you or hurt you. Like nature, the power of visualization is neutral. Like a two-edged sword, it can cut in either direction. It can either make you a success or make you a failure. Visualization brings you whatever you vividly and intensely imagine, whether good or bad. Continually feed your mind with clear, exciting, emotional pictures. Remember, your imagination is your preview of life's coming attractions.
All things exist in the human imagination. And everything you see as an objective reality was produced by imagining. Think of one thing, just think of one thing that would simply deny it. You can't think of one thing.
Einstein's most famous quote, one of his most famous observations, he said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world." William Blake said that what is now proved was once only imagined. Now think about the importance of that. If you want to have something show up in your life, the kind of person you would like to become, manifest something new into your life, something powerful, whatever it might be, you obviously must first be able to imagine it. Your imagination. This is yours and yours alone. You can place anything into your imagination that you want to place there, independent of what anybody else says about it, independent of what your senses tell you, independent of all the evidence that may be to the contrary. You can place into your imagination. So you never want to place into your imagination any thought that you would not want to materialize. You never want to allow in your imagination to be contaminated by the way life used to be. Your imagination is yours. Don't let any other people influence you. Never allow people's ideas about what is possible or impossible for you to occupy your imagination. Einstein, once again, this man of imagination, said, "Logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere." That's the first of these wishes fulfilled foundations. The second foundation is very significant and very important. I call it living from the end. This is one of the harder ones for people to get, but I'd like you to go again to the New Testament. Look at Romans 4:17. In the presence of him whom he believed God, who gives life to the dead and calls those things which do not exist as though they did. Those are very important, significant words. You have to be able to call the things which you have not seen yet materialize and manifest into your physical world. You have to be able to say to yourself, I call those things that I would like to become as if they already do. And you place into your imagination fearlessly. When my leukemia diagnosis came in, the information that was sent to me continuously was, it's incurable. This is something that you can't change. And I would say to my children who would send me this, I would say, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't send me that kind of stuff. And they'd say, what do you mean? Why, Dad? Why wouldn't you want us to send that? It says that right in there. I said, what part of I am well is it that you don't understand? Because I have placed that into my imagination. I have a wonderful quote by the man I've cited before. His name is Neville. And he says, disregard appearances, conditions, in fact, all evidence of your senses, that is what your eyes and ears tell you, that deny the fulfillment of your desire. Rest in the assumption that you already are what you want to be. For in that determined assumption, you and your infinite being are merged in creative unity, and with your infinite being, God, all things are possible. God never fails, and you are a piece of that which never fails. I wrote a book a few years back. The title of it, I had to get my publisher because they didn't understand it. They called back, they said, I think you got this wrong. I said, no, it's called You'll See It When You Believe It. Not the other way around. People will say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. It doesn't work that way. You'll see it when inside you have a knowing. And Neville also said, therefore, to incarnate a new and a greater value of yourself, you must assume that you already are what you want to be, and then live by faith in this assumption. Now, this flies in the face of so much of what you've been told, because you have a tendency to believe that what your eyes and ears tell you is reality. But this is what we know by our senses. Just this little tiny fragment. I can't even get, it's like a millionth of a millimeter. And all that is unknown is in the invisible, in the imagination. And most of our attention is focused on, this is my beliefs and my disbeliefs about what is possible and what isn't possible are here. And it's an endless universe.
I want to show you today how to put your wonderful imagination right into the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and let it remain there and fall asleep in that state. And I promise you from my own experience, you will realize the state in which you sleep if you could actually feel yourself right into the situation of your fulfilled desire and continue therein until you fall asleep. As you feel yourself right into it, remain in it until you give it all the tones of reality, until you give it all the sensory vividness of reality. As you do it, in that state, quietly fall into sleep. And in a way you will never know, you could never consciously devise the means that will be employed, you will find yourself moving across a series of events leading you towards the objective realization of this state. Now here is a practical technique. The first thing you do, you must know exactly what you want in this world. When you know exactly what you want, make as lifelike a representation as possible of what you would see and what you would touch and what you would do, and physically moving in such a state. For example, if I now desired the mate of my life, were I now in search of some wonderful girl or some wonderful man, what would I actually find myself doing that would imply that I have found my state? For instance, suppose now I was a lady. One thing I would definitely do, I would wear a wedding ring. I would take my imaginary hands, and I would feel the ring that I would imagine to be there. And I would keep on feeling it until it seemed to me to be solidly real. I would give it all the sensory vividness I am capable of giving anything. And while I am feeling my imaginary ring, which implies I am married, I would sleep. You know, people are totally unaware of this fantastic power of the imagination. But when man begins to discover this power within him, he never plays the part that he formerly played. He doesn't turn back and become just the reflective life. From here on in, he is the affector of life. The secret of it is to center your imagination in the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain therein. For in our capacity to live in the feeling of the wish fulfilled lies our capacity to live the more abundant life. Most of us are afraid to imagine ourselves as important and noble individuals, secure in our contribution to the world, just because at the very moment that we start our assumption, reason and our senses deny the truth of our assumption. We seem to be in the grip of an unconscious urge which makes us cling desperately to the world of familiar things and resist all that threatens to tear us away from our familiar and seemingly safe moorings. But I appeal to you to try it. If you try it, you will discover this great wisdom of the ancients, for they told it to us in their own strange, wonderful, symbolical form. But unfortunately, you and I misinterpreted their stories and took it for history when they intended it as instruction to simply achieve our every objective. You see, imagination puts us inwardly in touch with a world of states. These states are existent, they are present now, but they are mere possibilities while we think of them. But they become overpoweringly real when we think from them and dwell in them. You know, there's a wide difference between thinking of what you want in this world and thinking from what you want. Let me tell you, when I first heard of this strange and wonderful power of the imagination, it was in 1933 in New York City. An old friend of mine taught it to me. He turned to the 14th of John, and this is what he read. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. He explained to me that this central character of the Gospels was human imagination, that mansion was not a place in some heavenly house, but simply my desire. If I would make a living representation of the state desired, and then enter that state and abide in that state, I would realize it. At the time, I wanted to make a trip to the island of Barbados in the West Indies, but I had no money. He explained to me that if I would that night, as I slept in New York City, assume that I was sleeping in my earthly father's house in Barbados, and go sound asleep in that state, that I would realize my trip. Well, I took him at his word and tried it. For 1 month, night after night, as I fell asleep, I assumed I was sleeping in my father's home in Barbados. At the end of my month, an invitation from my family came, inviting me to spend the winter in Barbados. I sailed for Barbados the early part of December of that year. From then on, I knew I had found this Savior in myself. The old man told me that it would never fail. Even after it happened, I could hardly believe that it would not have happened anyway. That's how strange this whole thing is. On reflection, it happens so naturally. You begin to feel or to tell yourself, well, it would have happened anyway. And you quickly recover from this wonderful experience of yours. It never failed me. if I would give the mood, the imagined mood, sensory vividness. I could tell you unnumbered case histories to show you how it works. But in essence, it's simple. You simply know what you want. When you know what you want, you're thinking of it. That is not enough. You must now begin to think from it. Well, how could I think from it? I am sitting here, and I desire to be elsewhere. How could I, while sitting here physically, put myself in imagination at a point in space removed from this room and make that real to me? Quite easily. My imagination puts me in touch inwardly with that state. I imagine that I am actually where I desire to be. Now, can I tell that I am there? There is only one way to prove that I am there. For what a man sees when he describes his world is as he describes it relative to himself. So what the world looks like depends entirely upon where I stand when I make my observation. So if, as I describe my world, it is related to that point in space I imagine that I am occupying, then I must be there. I am not there physically, no, but I am there in my imagination, and my imagination is my real self. And where I go in imagination and make it real, there I shall go in the flesh also. When in that state I fall asleep, it is done. I have never seen it fail. So this is the simple technique on how to use your imagination to realize your every objective. Here is a very healthy and productive exercise for the imagination.
So tonight, take a goal. Make it a lovely goal, either for yourself or for another. For any time that you exercise your imagination lovingly on behalf of another, you're mediating God to that other. So, bring a friend before your mind's eye. Represent him to yourself as the man or the woman that you would like them to be. And don't tell them, ask for no praise, just assume that they're talking to you and telling you the most marvelous news about themselves. And you congratulate them on that good news. And go your own way. Believe in the reality of that imaginal act. It may happen tomorrow. It may happen the day after, or a week later, or a month later. It has its own appointed hour. So don't be concerned. Leave it alone. And it will come to pass. So this is what I mean by feeling is the secret. I catch the mood, the feeling that would be mine if I were what I want to be. What would the feeling be like if she were well? If she were this? And then you catch it, just as though it is true. You always go to the end, and the end is where you begin. You're always imagining ahead of our evidence. So go to the end, and feel the end. And then, dwell in that end, even though reason denies it, and your senses deny it. You turn your back upon the doubters, and then you walk as though things were as you want them to be. And living in that assumption, it slowly hardens into fact. Even though at the moment of the assumption it was denied by reason, an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. So you learn to assume and learn to persist in the assumption, and it will come to pass.
chào mừng tất cả mọi người đã trở lại với kênh của Bích Diễm. Thì hôm nay nhân dịp Chủ nhật thì cháu nó rảnh rỗi thì nó chở Diễm vào thăm một cái di tích lịch sử, một cái địa điểm tham quan nổi tiếng của tỉnh Quảng Nam, đó là quần thể tượng đài Mẹ Việt Nam Anh Hùng. Thì nhân cái dịp này thì Diễm cũng xin mời tất cả mọi người cùng đón nghe và xem cái phong cảnh. Và Diễm xin gửi đến tất cả mọi người một cái bài hát về cái chủ đề quê hương của mình. Đó là một sáng tác nhạc của nhạc sĩ Giáp Văn Thạch, thơ của nhà thơ Đỗ Trung Quân, được mang tên Quê Hương. Quê hương là chung khế ngọt cho con trèo hái mỗi ngày. Quê hương là đường đi học, con về dập bướm vàng bay. Quê hương là con diều biếc, tuổi thơ con thả trên đồng. Quê hương là con đò nhỏ êm đềm khua nước ven sông. Quê hương là cầu tre nhỏ, mẹ về non lá nghiêng tre. Quê hương là đêm trắng tỏ, hoa cau rụng trắng ngói thêm. Quê hương mỗi người chỉ một, như là chỉ một mẹ thôi. Quê hương nếu ai không nhớ sẽ không lớn nổi thành người. Quê hương là chung khế ngọt cho con trèo hái mỗi ngày. Quê hương là đường đi học, con về dập bướm vàng bay. Quê hương là con diều biếc, tuổi thơ con thả trên đồng. Quê hương là con đò nhỏ êm đềm khua nước ven sông. Quê hương là cầu tre nhỏ, mẹ về nó lá nghiêng tre. Quê hương là đêm trắng tỏ, hoa cau rụng trắng ngói thêm. Quê hương mỗi người chỉ một, như là chỉ một mẹ thôi. Quê hương nếu ai không nhớ